Now let's dig a little bit deeper into organizing our scenes in Maya. We're going to start with the outliner, which is probably one of the more important windows in Maya. We can access the outliner in one of two places. We can go into Windows, Outliner, and that floats a window that we can use. Another way is to make it part of a viewport. So what we can do is create a different layout that has multiple viewports. So I like this one here, which is side by side. And then under any viewport, you can change what type of panel it is. So if we look under panels, we can change it from, say, a perspective view to an orthographic view. But what we're looking for is the panel menu. And under that, you should be able to find Outliner. And when we do, it brings up an outliner as part of that viewport. Now I'm going to work with a floating window, so I'm going to go back to my single panel layout and then just go Windows, Outliner. Now the outliner window contains an entry for every object in the scene. Now the easiest way to use the outliner is just as another way to select objects. So if I click on an object here or click on an entry, it will select that object. So this is just another way to select objects by name. If I want, I can select multiple objects by holding down the Shift key. So if I Shift and select, I can select multiple objects. Or if I want, I can select ranges of objects. So if I select, say, this TV stand at the top and hold down the Shift key, and go a little bit further down, I can select multiple objects very quickly. Now another way to select is to use Control and click. So if I select one object here, hold down Control, I can pick any other object. Now this doesn't fill in the gap with more selections, so this is a more discerning way to select. And this allows me to toggle things on and off and select them as I want. Now, one of the things you'll notice in the outliner is that we have a little plus sign next to some of these objects. So let's say I zoom in on this stereo console here, and I can actually select it and hit the F key to frame it up. And if we expand that plus sign, you'll see that this console is constructed of a number of different objects. So we have the stereo console itself, which is basically the big cabinet that this is comprised of, but we also have separate objects for the legs underneath it. We have a separate object for the lid. We have a separate object for the stereo receiver. And then we also have the turntable, which is over here. Now this turntable also has a little plus sign next to it. So if we expand that, you'll see that we have objects for the knobs and the turntable platter. So as you can see, we have what's called a hierarchy. This is very similar to the folders that you have on the hard drive of your computer. So this stereo console is the parent of all of these objects, and the turntable base is a child of the stereo console, but it's also a parent of, say, the platter and the knobs and so on. So I can select parts of these objects, or I can dig a little bit deeper into the hierarchy to select things that are deeper. So we can also open and close these by hitting the plus sign. So this is a great way to organize scenes. So we can have separate objects and then they can be nested so that we can select them basically in layers or hierarchies. Now, another thing you'll notice in the outliner is that some objects have different icons next to them than other objects. So if I were to select this table, the icon next to that represents a polygonal object. So this particular object is constructed of polygons. The couch is also constructed of polygons. But if we zoom out, you'll see that we have spotlights, and they have a different icon. And the camera itself also has a different icon. If we expand the fireplace, you'll see that a couple of these objects have little blue icons next to those, and those are NURBS surfaces, which are just a different type of geometry than polygons. It's a patch-based surface, and we'll learn about all these differences in a bit. And then you'll also notice that some objects are grayed out. So this camera, we can actually see, but some of these other ones, such as perspective, top, front, and side, those are grayed out. And that means that they are hidden. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about showing and hiding objects in a bit, but just know that when something's grayed out, that means it's in the scene, but we just can't see it. Now, there's also ways to filter objects in the outliner. So let's say we wanted to see only the spotlights. I can go into this particular search box and just type in spot, and it will show up anything that has the word spot in it. So now I found all of the spotlights. If I want to find, say, all the chairs, I can type in chair, and that finds anything that has that particular string of characters in it. Now, if we want, we can also limit what we're seeing in the outliner by going into the show menu. So if we go into show, we can go into objects, and we can actually show only certain types of objects. So if we click on lights, then it will only show the spotlights. If we click that off, it shows everything. If we only show geometry, it'll turn off all the lights and cameras. So this is a great way to kind of narrow down what you see in the outliner so that you can get to what you want. Now, we also have a display menu, and this allows us to display and hide specific types of objects. So if we want, we can turn on, for example, shapes. So take a look at what we have here. So we basically have plus signs next to a couple of these. But if we turn on shapes, what happens is that plus signs go up against all of these. So let's go ahead and take this table. Now, what shows up really isn't a hierarchy, it's just a level of detail in the object. So the main node of the object is really its position information, where it is in space. And this is really the data that you see in the channel box. But if we go into the outliner, you'll see that we have the table itself as well as a shape node. Now, the shape node determines exactly what the geometry for this is. So if we select that table shape node, it only shows that particular node. Now, this is important if you get a little bit deeper into Maya. For what we're learning right now, it's not that important. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this off and just know that that is there. So, as you can see, the outliner has a lot of flexibility, and it's a great way to organize and select the objects in your scene.